Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're talking about the brand new installment into the DCEU, Shazam, Fury of the Gods. Once again directed by David F. Sandberg and starring a reprising cast of people like Zachary Levi, Asher Angel, Jack Dylan Grazer, Jimon Hansu, Grace Caroline Curry, and many more, Shazam, Fury of the Gods is the sequel to the simply titled Shazam. Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to my spoiler-free review for the new Shazam movie, Shazam, Fury of the Gods. It's always nice to go check out any comic book movie, and yeah, I'm just happy to see a new DC film in theaters. And with everything going on at Warner Brothers with DC and the mess that the DCEU, now known as the DCU, has been, I think there's a lot of questions in the air in terms of, is this movie even going to count? What's going to come moving forward? Are we going to have anything to really look forward to after this movie? And I'm happy to say, without getting into spoilers, it does seem like this will have some nice connections into things moving forward, hopefully based on the post-credit scenes. There are two of those, as well as just the way that this film ends. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that this film does have some things that can expand upon the rest of the DCU, because there are moments in this film that definitely gave me some chills and got me emotional and got me excited, and also made me realize that despite there being some issues across this current iteration of the DCU, and we are getting a bit of a timeline reset, I have enjoyed a lot of what we've gotten up to this point, and I've enjoyed most notably the actors in these specific roles. And today we're talking about, again, the sequel to Shazam, Fury of the Gods this time around, and I'm happy to say I had a good time with this movie. This is similar to the first one, a very familiar tale about family, this time around touching a lot more about purpose, one's purpose, and the idea of almost imposter syndrome in a lot of ways, the idea of not really knowing if you are the one that should have this power. And in the meantime, you also have this family story where we have Billy Batson, we have Shazam here played by Zachary Levi and Asher Angel, and they're trying to keep the group together. If you remember, at the very end of the first film, the rest of the gang end up getting powers. Now Shazam is trying to pull his group, his family together to try to make this superhero team that is one unit and does everything together, except everybody's kind of off doing their own thing, and nobody really knows exactly who and what they want to be. Everybody has a different kind of approach to what they want to do with their lives and what they want to do with their powers, and Billy is not really feeling super comfortable with that over the course of the film. He wants to try to be the leader of this team, but doesn't really feel like he should have these powers, doesn't really feel like the leader of this team, and over the course of the film has to learn to work together with his brothers and sisters, as well as working together to kind of just find who he is throughout the course of the film. Beyond that, we also have to deal with the villains of this film, played by Helen Mirren and Lucy Liu specifically, who are the daughters of Atlas, and they've come for the spear that was broken in the last film so that they can regain the power of their father that has now been imbued into Shazam and the rest of the Shazam team. And so of course now you have these two badass women that are trying to get their power back, trying to get their father's power back. You got goddesses, you got monsters, you got creatures, you got a big dragon in this movie, and a bunch of comic book elements that you can come to expect from these films. I will say, if you've seen the trailer, unfortunately, I think the trailer just gives away far too much of this movie. So unfortunately, while I did enjoy the film, I found that a lot of the film did feel very predictable, and not because it wasn't something that had a lot of twists and turns or some surprises, because there are some surprises throughout, but ultimately I think that the trailer showed so much, and then the film has a bit of a familiar tale and isn't necessarily wholly original, so it's pretty easy to see where some things are going to go. With that said though, as I mentioned earlier on, I did find myself throughout the course of the film feeling some emotion at times, and there was definitely some moments that actually gave me chills over the course of the film, specifically in the third act, where we have a lot of big over-the-top action filled with great creature design, a lot of big CGI action battles. And if that's not your kind of thing, maybe you won't like this movie, but for somebody who's a huge fan of the character of Shazam and these characters in general, it's just nice to see certain things being brought to screen that I always thought would just be stuck to the pages or in just animated movies. Yeah, I think for the most part here you have a really strong cast. I think that the visual visuals are really strong throughout. There's a great use of practical effects along with the CGI. Of course, if you've seen the trailer, this is a huge CGI heavy film, and I've always been an advocate for CGI if it fits within the tone of the film. So there are moments of this film where some of the CGI feels a little bit cartoony, a little bit over the top, but I think for the most part, it all remains within tone of what this film is and the visual style of this movie. And beyond the CGI, there are some great moments of just like great set design and location use that's maybe amplified by some CGI. I also found that because we're dealing with goddesses and different, mythological elements here, there's some really great use of practical costumes and makeup that I think really elevate the material here, elevate the look and the feel of the film. I really enjoyed the lighting throughout the course of the film as well. And visually, I just found myself really engaged in the film. Even when the CGI looked a little bit cartoony, when I've seen some people criticize that a little bit heavier, I'm thinking you're watching a Shazam live action movie. It's one of the cartooniest and most kind of free-hearted, light-hearted kind of characters in the DC lineup, and so it makes sense that the visuals would kind of follow suit. And so I think that the very last part of this film, the third act, is just a lot of big over-the-top visuals and CGI that I found myself honestly really engaged in, and I had a lot of fun with. On a story level, like I said, this is a very familiar tale, and I don't want to get too much further into what this movie's all about other than what I've already said, but I do really find that it did a good job of expanding upon these characters now that they've been established with their powers for a little bit longer. We already know who these characters are. It's more about just seeing how they've chosen to live with these powers. Unfortunately, similar to the first film, I do think there are people that are part of the family who don't get a whole lot of screen time. That was a big criticism I had when I reviewed the very first Shazam, is I really enjoyed the film. I had a lot of fun with it, and there are some elements of this film that I would say I almost enjoyed more than the first film. But I think a similar issue that both films has is that both the parents in both movies, while they do have some funny moments and some touching moments with the characters, I don't really feel like they're established too much. They don't really have too much to do. They don't have too much fleshing out of their characters. And a lot of the other brothers and sisters who are maybe not at the center of the story, they don't really have a whole lot to do. The brothers and sisters who have the most time here in this film are definitely the ones played by Jack Dylan Grazer and the one played by Grace Caroline Curry. And I want to talk about her in just a moment, who plays Mary, but I did find that the characters of Freddie and Mary had a lot more to do in this film. Freddie definitely had a lot to do in the first film as well, so it follows suit here. But I do feel like a lot of the other brothers and sisters don't have an abundance to do narratively in this film, which was unfortunate. I was hoping that now that they had powers, they would have spent a little bit more time with them on a character level, but I do think that everybody has their moment to shine, so there's thankfully never a moment where I feel like all these characters felt wasted. It just felt like they could have done more with them, and I would argue that that's my biggest issue narratively across the board. I found that they did a really good job when it came to the character of Billy Batson, when it came to the character of Freddie, and it came to some of the villains, but when it came to the overarching narrative and all the different characters, I do think that there were some holes in there. I do think that they could have maybe even extended the runtime a little bit just to flesh out certain story beats that maybe could have impacted a little bit heavier when some of the emotional beats start to land near the end of the film. Now, I mentioned I wanted to talk a little bit more about Grace Caroline Curry, and specifically because in the first film, when she, like the rest of the kids, end up getting their powers, they all become a different person. Of course, you have Billy Batson becoming Zachary Levi, and all the other characters here become different actors, adult actors, so they of course don't look like who they are. And we knew pretty early on, when some of the early marketing had started to come out and when they started talking about the film, that this actress was actually going to be playing herself when she turned into the Shazam version of herself, which was not the case in the first film, because in the first film she was actually played by Michelle Borth in that quick moment at the end of the film when she becomes a Shazam character. And the reason they said that they chose to do this was because the actress had kind of aged up already and was a little bit more within the age range already, or at least looked like the age range of where she would have been, where the other actress was when she would become a Shazam character, which made sense, I guess, but I was hoping that they would address that in this film, as she's the only one in the crew who becomes a Shazam hero and is played by the exact same actress. They never really address it though, and that's something that really bummed me out. I will say, if you were going into this hoping that they would maybe make some reference to it, maybe have a jokey moment that at least you can kind of be like, okay, they wrote it in some sort of silly thing to kind of try to explain it. Yeah, I was really disappointed to see that they didn't really expand upon that. She just becomes the same person when she becomes Shazam, and none of the other characters do that. It didn't really make sense to me, but here we are. Helen Mirren and Lucy Liu as our main villains in the film I thought were really fun. I thought they had a good time with it. You can tell that they were just hamming it up and just kind of leaning into these performances and these characters as they're playing these over-the-top mythological beings, these goddesses. So everything from the way that they would walk and speak and the power that they tried to give off as their performances, I think for the most part it all really worked. You can tell right from the very beginning of the film that they were definitely a threat to be reckoned with, and overall I enjoyed their performances in the film. Again, you can just tell that these two actresses were having fun, hamming it up, playing these villains that are larger than life, and I think that for the most part they really nailed those performances. And yeah, I don't want to talk too much more on spoilers as this is a new film, and I just wanted to kind of ramble my thoughts overall, and I'm happy to say I had a fun time with Shazam! Fury of the Gods. In some way I enjoyed it a little bit more than the first film, but I would say that for the most part they're very similar films. This one's definitely heavier when it comes to the action and a lot of the big over-the-top visuals. I'll say that I definitely enjoyed the resolution of this film a lot more, and I enjoyed the overall spectacle and just big over-the-top comic book element of this film more than the first one. But maybe the first film maybe had a little bit of a tighter narrative across the board when it specifically comes to focusing on Billy Batson. But I did find that this film did really elevate a lot of the material from the first film. It expands upon a lot of things in a lot of fun and great ways. There's some great moments of humor throughout the course of this film. I thought that the tone was consistent throughout. I found that the film was really well paced as well. It's decently normal length film for this kind of a movie, and I never really felt any sort of runtime. I was never bored throughout. I was engaged, I was laughing, I was having a good time. There were moments that gave me chills. There were moments that the action was just badass and fun to watch as a fan of this kind of stuff. And beyond that, I also want to mention that Jimon Hansu this time around is a much bigger presence in the film, and I loved his character here. Of course, he was the wizard in the first film who gave Shazam his powers, who gave Billy the powers of Shazam, and he wasn't really all that much in the first film. We saw in the trailers he'd be in the second film, and I'm happy to say he had a far bigger role this time around. I thought he was a great comedic character throughout the course of the film, as somebody who's playing it serious for the most part, so his humor is really subtle. I thought that he had a lot of really great lines and some great story expansion when it came to his character, and overall he was definitely one of the highlights of the film when I look back on it. So yeah guys, I don't want to get too much further into anything because I don't want to spoil anything. I can't get too much deeper into talking about certain things and my thoughts without spoiling the film, but overall I had fun with it. I look forward to hearing what you guys have to say. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Did you agree with me? Did you not agree with me? Whatever the case may be, leave any and all comments down below, and I'll see you beautiful people in the next one. Bye-bye.